There is actually
the troll song.
Damn Rod. Sorry.
Of course, it looks absolutely intense as well. We'll start with you, Charlie. Your character, of course, has a lot of menace, and still, at the same time, it has a lot of charisma as well. A lot of people are wondering, how are you cracking that kind of balance?
I think it all has to come from an internal drive to achieve something, right? And I think the other thing, I don't really think about how things are going to be perceived. It's more just like, I was just trying to get Celebrimbor to make me some rings. So everything, the way he presents and all of that kind of stuff is for Celebrimbor. In the same way that there's scenes with Adar in the first couple, and that's all kind of like mind games. Does he really know that I'm Sauron? I just kind of like play the scenes and everything else.
But a character like these, they usually, evoke negative kind of emotions. But yours is also, people are impressed with the kind of charm that you're portraying. So,
that's good.
Have you put any personal trait of yours?
There's no personal trait. No, I can't really.
That'd be too dark of a personal trait.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be. I don't think I'm allowed to say. I'd probably get arrested if I said yes.
How about you? Could you add any personal trait of yours to add life to your character?
Yeah, always. I think I try and, whatever role I'm playing, I always draw on possibly similarities of myself and the character I'm playing. So, yeah, I will always think about things and how I might approach it, or the other way around.
This is NDTV, and you're watching NDTV 24/7.
Hello and welcome to India Global. I'm Gaurie Dwivedi. The next 30 minutes, we're going to get you the big foreign policy stories. But first up, the headlines. Prime Minister Modi, in his fresh outreach to ASEAN, is set to attend the ASEAN-India meeting. The India-ASEAN friendship is crucial amidst conflict, says Prime Minister Modi as he heads for Laos. World mourns the loss of iconic businessman and industrialist Ratan Tata. Bill Gates says the loss of Ratan Tata will be felt around the world. The legacy of the Tata Group lives on. As tensions continue to remain in the Middle East, fresh update coming in that the Israeli Security Cabinet is set to vote on what should be Israel's response to the Iranian attack. Israel Defense Minister says that he vows lethal retaliation to Iranian attack. China sanctions 3 American firms over Taiwan sales arms to Taiwan. Sanctions also slapped on 10 senior American executives. World Bank raises India's growth outlook for 2025 to 7%. World Bank raises South Asia growth forecast to 6.4%. A lot of it is due to the rise in the Indian economy. All right, the first story on the show, India's ASEAN outreach continues. Prime Minister Modi is attending the ASEAN-India meeting. This also marks the 10th anniversary of his government's Act East policy. Prime Minister Modi also said that the friendship between India and ASEAN is in fact crucial amidst the conflict that the world is witnessing. Bilaterals have also been held with the Japanese Prime Minister as India marks a decade of its Act East policy. Let's first listen in to Prime Minister Modi. We come back and talk more on this.
मेरा मानना है कि 21वीं सदी एशियन सेंचुरी भारत और आसियान देशों की सेंचुरी है। आज जब विश्व के कई हिस्सों में संघर्ष और तनाव की स्थिति है, तब भारत और आसियान की मित्रता, समन्वय, संवाद और सहयोग बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण है। आसियान की सफल अध्यक्षता के लिए मैं लाओ पीडीआर के प्रधानमंत्री सोनसाई सिपांदोन को हार्दिक बधाई देता हूं। मुझे विश्वास है कि आज की हमारी बैठक भारत और आसियान साझेदारी में नए आयाम जोड़ेगी। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
All right, let's get in my colleague Kadambini Sharma to fill us in with the very latest and give us details of the significance of this entire trip. Kadambini, good to have you on the show. Take it away. Tell us the significance and the importance of this visit.
Well, let me tell you first what the PM has said in his closing statement. He has talked about two joint statements. One is the digital transformation and another one is comprehensive strategic partnership. And he has said that these two agreements which have been accepted will go a long way in the cooperation between ASEAN and India. Also, he has thanked Singapore as a coordinator with ASEAN. Now, the new coordinator is Philippines and he has welcomed those. But one important part which he said earlier while he was speaking at the opening of this summit, he has said that these are the countries which are friends, which are neighbors, and also they are standing together when there is so much conflict in the world. And he has also said that there should be Samanvay, Samvad and Sahyog, that is coordination, communication and cooperation. The three C's he is talking about these countries. Now we have to understand that the theme of this ASEAN-India summit has been connectivity and resilience. Both are very important to India as well as the ASEAN nations. We have seen how India has helped as far as natural disasters are concerned. Recently we saw a typhoon after which India was the first responder, and here too India had helped not only Laos but also Vietnam. So we have seen India coming forward for these countries. As far as the diaspora is concerned, these 7 countries, the ASEAN countries actually have almost 20% of Indian diaspora. They are the top trade partners of India, and both these things, they help not only in people-to-people connect, but also the resilience, supply chain resilience, which is very important, which India has been saying since the COVID time, that the resilience of supply chains has to be maintained, and it has been working towards it. We have seen this with Singapore, we have seen this with Brunei, and now also the ASEAN-India summit here. The importance which India attaches to ASEAN is very clear by the fact that last year, if you remember, India was preparing for G20 in full swing. Even then, PM flew to Jakarta to attend the ASEAN-India summit. So this is something which is very important to India, and this is a moment of strengthening the relationship as well as reviewing and taking it forward.
Absolutely. And in terms of specifics, what could be the kind of specifics that we could expect in terms of outcomes? Because, you know, this is sort of a continuation. We hosted the Malaysian Prime Minister, then the PM also went to Brunei, Singapore, and now, of course, ASEAN. So in terms of specifics, any idea, what are your sources telling that could be the highlight of this visit?
Well, our sources have told us that we would not be disappointed. Those were the exact words, that we would not be disappointed. There would be some really important takeaways. We are still waiting for what would be the takeaways and how important they are. But of course, it would be in field of connectivity, it would be in field of supply chain resilience and much more. But let me also tell you about the East Asia Summit, which is also very important. There are observers, there are other partner countries who are there. Japan is there, New Zealand, Australia, China. These are also there. We have just had information that there was a bilateral meeting between the new Japanese PM as well as the New Zealand PM. So these are the two bilaterals which have happened. There are more expected. But also while the East Asia Summit is happening, there is also Myanmar on the table. We know what the situation in Myanmar is and how India's stance on this is. So there might be some discussion about it. Also, there would be discussions about the cyber scam about which all the countries of Southeast Asia are quite worried.
All right, Kadambini, we leave it there. Really appreciate you joining us on the broadcast with that. Let's quickly now take a look at and focus on the first big discussion that we are having on India Global, which is the latest as far as India-China. Well, the fact is that ties have seen a bit of a thaw in the last couple of weeks. There was also comments coming in from the foreign minister that 75% of the issues seem to have been resolved. But in the backdrop of that, the senior commanders of the Indian Army are set to meet in Sikkim, the very first time that a meeting will be held near the line of actual control. What's the signaling? What's the messaging that the Indian Army is giving to its counterpart in China? Remember, 75% have been resolved, not 100%. Most importantly, this meeting isn't happening, in fact, in two phases. Phase 1 is to happen right now, which is 10th and 11th of October. Second phase will be on the 28th and 29th of October. The idea is to figure out capacity building, operational issues, and human resources, essentially identifying if there is any gaps in terms of the Indian Army's preparedness when it comes to handling the China threat. Let's quickly also now get in the guests this evening to talk more about this big story. Let's first get in Ambassador Shashank, to former Foreign Secretary, and we also have Gunjan Singh to talk more about this. Ambassador Shashank, I want to start with you, sir. The fact is that, as I said, 75% may have been resolved, 100% is not resolved. The Indian Army still needs to prepare because the adversary is still very much there on the border. China has ramped up its presence significantly in the last couple of years, since 2020. And as the onset of winter is there, ahead of that, India and the Indian Army needs to prepare. But how do you see this, the messaging, the signaling, the fact that it's Sikkim, and the fact that it's very close for the first time to the line of actual control?
Well, China is an important Asian country, so we have to keep that in mind. And as our army chief has said, that the situation on the border with China is stable but tense. So therefore, we have to remain careful, prepare ourselves fully, and give signals of the right kind to the Chinese, that while we are willing to discuss with them all the pending issues, at the same time, we have to remain quite well prepared to protect our interests. And I think the Chinese also know that India would like to be friendly with the other Asian countries. So it's not just a question of China-India bilateral relations where they can muscle in, but also a question that all the Asian countries are negotiating among themselves. They are talking to each other, and the Chinese have to cut down their muscle flexing in the area. I think, therefore, what I would say that Indian commanders, army commanders, are giving the right signal to the Chinese people and Chinese army that, well, while we are willing to work out some peaceful solutions, but there should be taking into account the positions of both the countries. India completely, fully into account.
In fact, as I read it, the messaging is very clear that India is prepared. The talks may continue, thaw is good to have, but the fact is we are ready, we are prepared, and we will continue to be so. Gunjan Singh, in terms of the messaging to China, at a time when parallelly talks are happening, at a time when efforts are being made to get that thaw in, to make continued progress, how do you see this?
Good evening, Gaurie. As Ambassador Shashank has already mentioned, that obviously it's a good posturing, that we are ready, we are prepared. And as you said too, that thaw is good to have, but preparedness is also the right way to go, because the Chinese and the Indian military, though there has been some disengagement, we've seen 4 sectors where the disengagement has happened over the last 4 years after the 21 rounds of talks and 31 rounds of border negotiations and other talks. However, Sikkim is the area, like Ladakh and Sikkim region, Depsok and other areas where the disengagement still hasn't happened. Both the militaries are on a high alert. We are entering the 4th winter, which is, we know, given the terrain and the weather is the most difficult part to actually maintain or actually do border patrolling. India, over the last 4 years, 5 years, have been denied patrolling about 20 regions where they used to patrol before April 2020, before the whole Galwan incident took place. So given that logic, obviously, as you said, Thaw is good, but obviously it's also showing that we are prepared. We also know that the defense minister will be there tomorrow in order to look after what are the preparedness on ground and do a ground check. He's also inaugurating a lot of border roads and border roads and bridges and other things.
Of course, infrastructure is continuing, and let me tell our viewers that there are two specific areas and issues on which there is still a major difference of opinion. One is, of course, creation of temporary camps by the Chinese at Gangtok, and second being the specific Chinese deployments at Depsang. Those remain, and that's essentially the most thorny issues. And Ambassador, let me ask you this, Ambassador Shashank, that while these preparedness is happening, this messaging is also being sent out to China. All of this is happening at a time when India is also increasing its engagements with China's neighbors. So all of that needs to be connected in terms of the larger message that India is sending out to Beijing.
Well, actually, in dealing with an important neighbor like China, we have to take into account the feelings of the other Asian countries. So we are constantly involving ourselves in consultations with them. Secondly, we also have organizations where China and India are both members. So therefore, we will have the SCO, we'll have the BRICS, and so many other, and RIC. So we have so many other organizations. We have to see what actually is the reaction of the Chinese, that on the basis of whatever are the views of the other Asian countries and India, and the views that these organizations, where they want to improve relations among the member countries. So we just have to wait and see. Point is that we have to make a very clear-cut statement on the ground that we will be quite well prepared and take whatever actions required to be taken to protect our interests. But at the same time, we are quite well prepared also to carry out consultations and communications with the Chinese people in whatever other forums we can do that.
All right, Ambassador Shashank and Gunjan, thank you so much for speaking to me on India Global, a story that I'm sure we're going to keep coming back to. On that note, we slip into a very short break. We come back and talk more about, well, India's trade agreements. What should be our priorities? How should we go about inking those free trade pacts, especially in the backdrop of what Commerce Minister said, that there are sometimes political pressures that trump economic interests. We come back and talk more. Stay with us.
Hi, we're talking Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power Season 2. Joining us is the stellar star cast. A very warm welcome to NDTV.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll start as a warm-up. We'll start with some puns. Why did Sauron start a fashion line?
To wear the One Ring?
You're close, because he always rings in the trends. Okay, second one.
Yeah, no, okay.
I promise it's a better one.
Okay, yeah.
What's Sauron's favorite kind of music? This is easy, huh?
Death metal?
Heavy metal. Yeah, sure. Death metal also works.
There's heavy metal in this season, you know.
There is.
There is actually.
The troll song.
Damn Rod, sorry.
Of course, it looks absolutely intense as well. We'll start with you, Charlie. Your character, of course, has a lot of menace, and still, at the same time, it has a lot of charisma as well. A lot of people are wondering, how are you cracking that kind of balance?
I think it all has to come from an internal drive to achieve something, right? And I think the other thing, I don't really think about how things are going to be perceived. It's more just like, I was just trying to get Celebrimbor to make me some rings. So everything, the way he presents and all of that kind of stuff is for Celebrimbor. In the same way that there's scenes with Adar in the first couple, and that's all kind of like mind games. Does he really know that I'm Sauron? I just kind of like play the scenes and everything else.
But you know, a character like these, they usually, I mean, evoke negative kind of emotions. But yours is also, I mean, people are impressed with the kind of charm that you're portraying. So,
that's good.
Have you put any personal trait of yours?
There's no personal trait. No, I can't really.
That'll be too dark of a personal trait.
Yeah,
if you say
yeah,
yes.
exactly. It'd be. I don't think I'm allowed to say. I'd probably get arrested if I said yes.
How about you? Could you add any personal trait of yours to add life to your character?
Yeah, always. I think I try and, whatever role I'm playing, I always draw on possibly similarities.
Get ready for your insider guide to the most anticipated event of the year. I'm Alistair D'Souza. Welcome to US Election Watch. From the latest campaign strategies to going beyond the rhetoric, we'll get you the headlines that matter most. We'll get you expert analysis, live updates, and exclusive interviews with key players shaping this historic election. Whether you're a political junkie or just trying to stay informed, US Election Watch has you covered. Don't miss US Election Watch, where every vote counts and every moment matters. Catch us every week and stay ahead of the curve. US Election Watch, your front row seat to democracy in action.
Welcome back. You're watching India Global. The big focus now is about India's trade talks. Which way should it be? What should be our guiding spirit and focus in terms of how we go about inking those trade pacts is really the key question that we will now be discussing. Remember, Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal recently said that India, under the previous political regime of UPA, was made to sign RCEP when it should not have. But the larger question we are asking is that as India talks about more FTAs, how should it go about protecting domestic interests, and what should happen in the event that there are more protectionist tendencies coming to the world after a possible Trump 2.0 presidency? That is our big focus. How should we go about inking trade pacts, protecting domestic interests, and at the same time warding off some of those protectionist tendencies? Joining me on the broadcast to take this forward is Dr. Asif Iqbal, who's former trade expert and president of the Indian Economic Trade Organization, Mithali Nikore, who is an economist as well. And I think they're with me on the broadcast. Mithali, let me start with you, in fact, and give you the first chance to come in here. How do you respond to the commentary made by the Commerce Minister, not specifically about the politics of it, but what I'm asking is that how should we now go about inking trade pacts? Should there be a complete difference in our approach in terms of inking free trade pacts?
Thanks, Gaurie. Such a pleasure to be on the program with you today. And I think, Gaurie, very clearly, what is evident is we have to look at our basic brass tacks economics when we are talking about free trade agreements. When I was doing some advisory work for the government, they actually told us how some of the free trade agreements are being negotiated, where they come in, the bureaucracy from our side comes in, and they're met by economists, experts, and finance experts and trade experts and sector experts from the other side with whom they are negotiating. And on this side, a lot of the preparatory work to understand what are the sectors where our competitive advantage stands is actually, the heavy lifting is being done by the bureaucracy and by, a lot of the trade ministries. So I think what we really need is a lot more data-driven, evidence-based research to understand and identify those sectors where we are going to hold that competitive advantage.
I think one of the biggest complaints that the Indian industry has been having for the last couple of years, and in fact, Dr. Asif, let me ask you this, which is that some of its sectors like steel, cement, power have been the ones that have been at the receiving end of an influx of cheaper imports, which is why, of course, duties were slapped. But how do we now go about talking and addressing this going forward? And in fact, these comments were made in the UAE, where Commerce Minister was and where you are right now. So talk to us about what should be the first or second priorities that should guide India to ink its future FTAs.
Thank you, Tani. Now, I think, as much as we have benefited from the trade agreements in the past, there has been a negative trade balances with many of these countries, and there have been agreements where we have a decline of manufacturing. And these sectors that you're talking, are directly responsible for the decline of manufacturing. And these deals have also led to deindustrialization and specific sectors, while I don't mention, there are industries, especially with electronics and light manufacturing, which have really suffered on account of these, FTAs. And policy and regulatory reforms, the effort to build this supportive infrastructure.
Dr. Asif, you're beginning to sound like Donald Trump. You're beginning to sound like Donald Trump. That's what he was. That's what he was saying. But,
Yes, but
then let me ask you this. Then what is the way forward? Because greater protectionism only hurts the economy at a macro level.
Absolutely. We are a farm-based economy. And if you see the legacies of our past and our, past, political aspirations, despite having many differences, what we have to do is the free market economics that we are having and the hostility that we are facing from our political rivals when rejecting such trade pacts, So the negative tone of this narrative, may be negotiated now. And coming back now to the distrust of free market economies, I would feel that two other compelling reasons are there, which is, the dismantling tariff barriers. They will prove very costly for a number of industrial enterprises that are globally competitive. I think this is something that we have to see. And a significant segment of industry, like the steel, plastics, and copper, they must be, steer clear of the RCEP. These are the two things that we must do.
I think RCEP is now history. We've not entered. We don't intend to, and I think that government position is very clear. But Mithali, then Mithali, last word I want to ask, which is that what about some of those most thorny discussions that we've been having for a very long time? US, UK. These are FTAs that we've made very little progress on because there are very entrenched positions on both sides, whether India or the other country.
No, absolutely. And I think here is where we need to start, removing and trying to break it down into smaller and smaller agreements. Can we have sector level agreements to begin with? Can we have agreements that focus just on merchandise trade? Agreements focusing just on services trade, agreements focusing just on even specific commodities and their value chains, looking at how logistics can be improved and how the shipping industries can be more integrated, looking at digitizations of trade facilitation and building, digital systems to improve the logistics costs. So breaking it down, Gaurie, is really the way I think that we can move forward on them. Otherwise, we will continue to remain stuck on one or two issues.
All right. As I said, there are no easy answers here. And I think it's just going to be case-to-case basis because India wants more open access on services and freedom of people. And that is where it gets stuck on manufacturing as well. All right. With that, it's a wrap. Thank you so much for joining me on this edition of India Global. And with that, we are wrapping this up. Thanks so much for watching this special episode. All right, well, this is a story that's heartbreaking. In fact, Ratan Tata, one of the iconic figures of Indian business, in fact, we lost him, India lost him yesterday late night. Ratan Tata is one of the pioneers of Indian business. He came at a time when the Tata Group was struggling with its own line of succession. JRD Tata had not created that succession line. So clearly, Ratan Tata came at a very at an inflection point for the Tata Group, and since then he of course made a mark across the board in many and several sectors for the Tata Group, whether it was Tata Motors, the introduction of that world famous Tata Nano that he brought in, where he said an Indian family deserves to sit in a four-wheeler, whether that or the ambitious takeovers that the Tata Group did across the world, or his philanthropic activities that never cease to amaze India and the world. That's his contribution to India, to the world, to the society, and for generations to come. A businessman, a philanthropist, a visionary, and a guiding light for Indian business. All right, that's all the time we have in this edition. Thanks so much for watching.
It's great to be helping out before my first grandchild arrives. And after having a few repairs myself, I need to make sure they'll all be protected. Which reminds me.
Welcome to British Seniors, the UK's #1 rated provider of over 50s life insurance.
Hi, I'd like a quick quote.
No problem. We're proud to offer our seniors